Alright everybody, welcome to a very quick and rough introduction into Tinkercad. Now what I'm going to do is, I'm in my account right now, I've already created it, and I'm going to show you how to create a new design. I'm just going to show you some of the basics. A lot of it you're going to just try to play around and figure out for yourself, but let's try a few things out. Now first off, this is your work plane. Once you start a new file, you're going to get these just random names, so don't worry about what this is. It's just a random title they give your file. You can always change this later. Now you can see all your controls here. Over here you've got some of your viewing controls. Up here you've got things like copy, paste, and duplicate. Over here group and ungroup, align. Over here you've got your basic shapes. And then here's where I want you to start. Right now the default is for this grid to be in 1 millimeter increments. So let's say, for example, I'm not sure what your project is, but let's say you're doing this but you want to work in inches. So if you go to Edit Grid, go to Inches, and you can update the grid. If you ever need to, you can just change this right back. And then notice the increments have changed. Now it's 1/8 inch increments. Now if I need to change that, I can change that right here, but I think I'm going to leave it at 1/8. So notice how the grid has changed. Those are all little 1/8 inch squares. So everything I do will snap to those squares. Now, mainly what you're going to use is all these shapes over here. Tinkercad is different from other 3D design programs in the sense that you don't build things from scratch. You use prefabricated shapes in combination to build what you want. Now in this case, I'm going to build a house. So I'm going to start off with just your basic box. Okay? Now, the next thing I want you to notice is the controls. To change your view, you can grab this little icon up here. Okay, and I'm on a Mac. If I hold Control and then I click on the work plane, I can also do the same thing. On your computer it might be different. It might be Command or Control. But if it doesn't have that, then just use this. Okay? You can zoom in and out with these plus and minus signs. You can zoom in on the part you're working on. If I click on this and I click this icon, I can zoom in on what I'm looking at. Okay, I'm going to back off just a little bit here. Okay, so there's just a little bit of navigation. Now, the shape itself. If I click on the shape, notice all these controls. Now let's start off with the ones you're probably more familiar with. These little white and black squares around the sides are just grabbing icons where you can grab something and then stretch it. So for example, if I grab, let's say I grab this black square right here and I drag it, I can change the width of my square. Okay, if I grab this white one on the top here, I can change the height. And then there's other ones here. If I grab this one in the corner, when I stretch it, I can change the width and the height. Okay? Alright, so those, all the squares just help you change the shape or the size of what you're working with. You'll notice these are kind of self-explanatory. These are to help you rotate. Now you can either grab one like that and just rotate. And then sometimes if you don't want to go by, if you want to go by certain increments, if you hold down the shift button, it'll shift to like 45 and 90 degree increments. Okay? And of course, if you want to rotate it other directions, you grab these other ones. Here's another one on this side, which helps me go this way. And there's one on the bottom here, which lets me go this way. Okay? Alright, so now you've got how to change the shape or size. You've got how to rotate it. Now this last little one is right here. And this one's a little tricky just because these two controls are too close together, but this little black arrow, what it does is helps you move your shape. Okay, now I can move my shape just by clicking and dragging it anywhere on the work plane I can go, but notice I can only go back and forth, left and right. If you click on this, what it does is it allows you to drag up and down. So let's say maybe I need to put something higher. In fact, let's get started. I'm going to do this. I'm going to put this back down. Oops. Let me just undo this here. There we go. And I'm going to drag out a roof for this shape. Alright, now my roof, of course I can't have it laying on the ground. It should be up here. So to change the height, and let me get my front view here so you can see it a little better. I'm going to grab this black arrow and I'm going to drag it up to the same height up here. Now notice the gap and notice the shadow so I can actually tell I've dragged it up. And now I can drag it over to go on top of my box. Okay, and there's your basic house. Alright, so that's the basic idea with using Tinkercad. Now, because you guys are working on houses, I thought I'd show you a little bit more and some possible ways to go about this. Because what Tinkercad is all about is, once again, about combining shapes. but it also is about combining holes. Notice over here in the basic shapes you've got these two things, but they're grayed out. These are holes. And what I mean by these holes is this. Let's say for some reason I need a cylindrical hole down the entire length of this house. Well, what I can do is I can drag this over, change my shape to whatever I want, but this is not a solid object. This is actually a hole that's going to be created. So if I drag this and overlay it on the house, and then if I select everything, I drag a box around it, and I click this, which is group, I'll group all my three pieces together, but because one of those pieces was a hole, it cuts a hole right through the middle of my shape. Now, of course, that's not what I want, so I'm going to undo that. Okay, but here's where you can use that to your advantage. So here's one possible way that you might want to do your house. Let's say you get your house to all the right dimensions. Of course, the problem is your house is not hollowed out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select all my pieces. I'm going to group them together so they're just one shape. And you can always ungroup. If you want to change something, you can always ungroup it later. Alright, but here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take my house and I'm going to go over here and make a copy of my house and then paste it in. And I'll leave that back over here so I have it for later. Then I'm going to do that again. Copy, paste. Now what I'm going to do with this version is this. I am going to take this corner and I'm going to drag it, well, let's just go for thick walls. I'm going to go a 1/4 inch in both directions. I'm going to make it a 1/4 inch less wide and a 1/4 inch more narrow and a 1/4 inch less wide this direction too. And for the roof, actually no, I'm sorry, I take that back. I did that wrong. I am going to keep it the same length this way, but I'm going to make it a 1/4 inch more narrow and a 1/4 inch shorter. Okay. What I'm then going to do is while it's selected, notice this appears here. Instead of treating it like a solid, I'm going to treat it like a hole. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my hole and I'm going to drag it over here. Now, with these two overlaid, if I select both, drag a box around them, and I hit group, what it'll do is it'll dig out my shape. And now notice I've got my house with hollow opening in the middle. Okay, so now I just need to replace the front and back walls. So my thought was to take this, let me copy paste one more, and what I can do is this. Actually, no, let me do that in a different order. I'm going to take this one first, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to make it thinner this direction. Let's go 1/8 of an inch. I'm going to select it, copy paste, and then if I get my view just right, there we go. I'm going to take this first one and I'm going to put it in the front. I'm going to take this one and overlay it in the back so I cover up the openings, and then I'm going to group everything together. Alright, so now it looks like a solid wall or a solid block, but if I actually rotate underneath, I can now see that I've got my hollow house. Okay, and now you can go in and you can add in all your other design elements. Maybe you want to put in a chimney. Maybe you want to put in a door or a window. Well, again, to do all that, it's just a combination of using solids and holes. So again, let's do a window. I'm going to just bring this block in here. I'm going to, I need some space to work. Let's put it over here. I am going to shrink the corner down a little bit to the size of the window. And by the way, it's okay if these things extend further than you need to be. They don't need to be perfect. Notice my walls aren't this thick, but if I use this will more than dig out a hole the size that I need. So let's move it up using that black arrow. And then let's move it over. I want to center it a little bit. Maybe make it a little bit wider this way. Okay, and then I'm going to lay it into my house like that. Okay, so notice it sticks out a little bit, but that's okay because this is a hole and not a solid object. And when I combine it, it's just going to eat away at that section of my house. And there's my window. Okay? You can see inside the house. Alright, so there's just a little bit of the basics of using Tinkercad. There's a lot more here that's going on, but I'm sure if you guys kind of play around with it and experiment, you'll figure it out. There's a lot of different items to play with. Text, you can do a round roof instead of a solid one. Maybe you want to do a cylindrical house instead of a rectangular one. Okay, but you've got a lot of choices here. You just have to get creative with how you combine these shapes and how you combine the holes. All right, good luck with this, and I hope your projects turn out great.